So in this session, we're going to have some fun with our collages that we made previously, using anything that we can get our hands on. And on the screen here on my sketchbook, you can see a number of items that I've found lying around, things that you can also use at home. If you don't have them all, it's absolutely fine. Just dig around and see what you can find. So many of you don't have paints at home at the moment. But a great solution to that is using a tea bag. So most of you, I'm sure, will have a tea bag that you can just pour a little bit of hot water over and then leave it to cool before you use it. If you don't have anything circular to draw around, like a pair of compasses, you could use a tin, or you could use the lid of your glue. So there's lots of ways that we can make marks on our paper today without needing any specialist equipment. And in terms of what we're going to make marks with, really, you just need a standard pen. If you happen to have a Sharpie pen as well, then you can play around with both of those. So let's get started. Move this out of the way to start off with. Okay, so previously we've been looking at the Dada artists to inspire us to make a collage relating to the crazy life and world that is 2020, or indeed now 2021. And you can see here on the left, I did a sketch of what I think is an iconic image of 2020, and then around it wrote lots of ideas about things that have happened. On the right hand side, I've put together my collage, and we're going to work into that today. Now, to give me inspiration, I found this artist here, and I thought his work was absolutely fantastic. So let's just have a little look at this for a moment. So this artist is called Louis Jouvet, and Louis Jouvet was born in Serbia in the 60s, but moved to Australia when he was 1 and has grown up in Australia. So he's an Australian contemporary artist. So contemporary means that he is practicing now. So unlike the Dada artists, he is an artist that is alive and practicing. That means making art now. You can go online and you can, if you've saved up a lot of money, you can buy one of his artworks. And you'll notice here that he signs each of the works in the top right corner. Now, what I love about his work is the way that he deconstructs people here, and he'll cut out certain parts. He's enlarged this image. That's not something you can do in traditional collage because you're sort of stuck with the image that you've got printed, but maybe he's used some digital techniques as well. I really love this kind of coffee ink stain and this blob around here. And it's not just collage, because what he does is he draws into his collages, and that's what you're going to do in this session. So you'll notice here we've got some scientific diagrams. We've got circles with stripes. We've got dotted lines coming around here. We've got little, what look like diagrams of some sort of engineering or mechanics. Inside here, we've got much more organic looking doodles. Over here, we've got numbers and arrows, dotted lines. This looks like some sort of molecular scientific diagram or structure. Here we've just got little bits of mark making that look like perhaps the texture of clouds or something like that. We've also got the odd word. So it says here, who's watching who? So interestingly, this is a portrait of George Orwell. George Orwell famously wrote the novel 1984, which is what the programme Big Brother is based on. So it all links together. There's every little thing in this image is related to the person that is being depicted. I can show you a couple more. Here we've got two political leaders, Putin and Kim, and I'm sure that even I don't understand some of the symbolic things that have been drawn in here. But what I do notice is this artist does use similar techniques and styles throughout. And that's what we do. We get ourselves things that we like to draw, our own style, a house style, that's what it's known in the business, and you add that into all of your pieces. Notice these letters here denotes the name or the beginning of the surname. We've got ovals, we've got colourful swoops, we've got dots showing a change in tone. Again, these very organic, sort of almost snake-like forms. We've got what looks like an atomic kind of diagram here. Loads and loads of really interesting things. And then finally, we have two artist portraits, Dali and Frida Kahlo. And what I love again is how, you know, this artist sort of chops people's heads out and then takes just the eyes, often in a circle. The circle is a real motif of this artist. Beautiful drawings of butterflies and tree-like, branch-like forms. A tea stain wash in the background, what looks like here. We've got the skull here, we've got ants. These are all things that have appeared in Dali's paintings in the past, and these are, again, this scene at the bottom looks like it's come from a Dali surrealist painting. And we know that Dali, Salvador Dali, was linked to the Dada artists. He was one of the original Dada artists, and then he went on to be a founding father of surrealism, which we know was, of course, linked or sort of inspired by Dada. What you can't see probably very well in the camera is this actually has got another layer, maybe like a ripped envelope or something that's been stuck here. Ink splatters, etc., etc. So we're going to have a go at making our collage more interesting, giving some doodles, some drawings, and some wash of tea staining. Okay? So coming back to my example, what I did when I looked at Jova's work is I started to do some sketches here. I wouldn't even call them sketches, I'd call them doodles really. And that's what I want you to do first of all. I want you to doodle either things from your imagination or from any images relating to your experience of 2020, whether you're focusing very much on the virus or whether you're thinking about how lockdown was for you, or if you're focusing on Black Lives Matter. I'd like you to do some doodles of things that relate to that. Also, you can doodle forms and shapes that you see in one of the Jova collages as well. So the dotted lines, the arrows, the circles, those are all very much part of his style. And then I want you to go over to your collage. What I'm going to do is just fold that over so we're very much focused on the collage now. We're going to work into the collage and just have some fun and really, really enjoy adding in some details. So first of all, really simply with a pen, you can see what I've started to do down here. I've started to draw a scientific sort of molecular chemical pattern, if you will. And to me, this all really links very much to the vaccine and us trying to combat the virus and the biochemical kind of struggle, if you will, between the virus and the vaccine. And I find that that's just a really therapeutic shape to continue to draw and build. So you can start to sort of draw these sorts of things in here. What I've also done is I've got this virus illustration that I'd cut out and stuck in anyway. And another thing that you can do is you can just outline some of the images and shapes and forms that are already in your collage, just to bring them to life a bit more. And then you can perhaps do some extension lines from them. You could even turn those into arrows. So you can look at, you know, almost like this virus is shooting out its, I don't know the chemical terms for it, but its attack, its method of attack, and I'm sure the proper biochemists amongst us would be able to give us the proper names. But I'm an artist, so I can visualize it, but I don't know the right words for it. So we can do that sort of thing. Here's where the baked bean tin comes in, or any kind of tin. So you'll notice in Jova's work that there's the circles are very, very important. They come into the work throughout. So I'm going to take a circle. I think I'm going to do a really big one around the eye section. you're feeling really brave, you could actually cut your collage out of your sketchbook and then start to recut into it all over again. So I could actually remove this page, draw this circle, and then cut it out and then rearrange my collage and really have some fun with it. So we've got a circle there, and from that circle we could perhaps, from the outside of the circle, we could draw some lines coming out like so. I might stop there, and then I'd quite like to do more of an outline around my main character's hair here, like so. I might carry on with that. And when I was doodling before, I sketched out a very simple icon of lungs, something we've looked at before, and I noticed that these very much look like branches on trees. So I thought that when I'm drawing into this, I might wish to perhaps use those forms. These are like upside down bronchi, which is all the little airways within your lungs, and it's those airways that get infected when you get a virus like pneumonia. So they sort of look a bit like trees and branches, so they could mean something else, but equally they've got a double meaning in this, that they sort of stand for lungs as well, which obviously is a big issue within society at the moment. We're obviously all trying to fight coronavirus and the risk of it. So those are some of the doodles you can do, but I want you to go mad, you know, go all over the drawing, really, you know, draw into each of the letters, bring them to life, outline them, for example. Like so, and so on and so on. Now, I've talked to you about tea staining, so we'll have a little look at that. So I'm going to have a little look at the top here. I'll bring you back my tea bag, which hopefully has cooled down slightly. So yeah, seems to be okay. So if I were you, I'd just squeeze it a little bit before you lift it up onto your work. And then you simply use the tea bag. You probably had a go at this before. I know we've used coffee in the past, but you can use it in order to stain your page. Okay, so it just gives it a little bit of a nice sort of translucent browny sort of effect. And what you can do is, what you'll find is you can let it dry, and then you can add more, so it becomes a bit of a richer, darker colour. My image is very dark, so it doesn't show up very well, but if you happen to have a much lighter collage, then you could even try throwing the tea bag onto your work, and what you end up with, although you can't see it very well, it's very dark, is nice little splats, and that's a nice way to sort of bring it to life a bit more. Okay, so a couple of other ideas for you to have a go at. Now, scissors, we've all got those at home. One thing you could do is, there's nothing to say that your page has to stay exactly the same shape as it is. What we could do is we could, I'm just going to rotate that, we could cut into the shape, sorry, into the page, and we can remove sections from the actual page itself, like so, which is really, really nice. You might work in a sort of a curve around. The only thing I would say is, don't go crazy with this, because you might find your page ends up all falling apart. So just just a few chops in from the edges. Try and leave the kind of main integrity of the page as it is, like that. And then you can take the section that you've cut out, and there's nothing to stop you then reusing it into your collage. So this part I've just cut out. I'm going to now stick that back in. Okay, and that makes it quite interesting, a little bit more interesting than it previously was. I've used the lid here previously, so I did a little practice run and I drew around my Pritt Stick lid to create that circle there. So there's so much scope for you to really, really bring this to life. And if I just remind you for the last time, our inspiration for this section of the collage is looking at this artist Louis Jauver and really, thinking about how we can draw into it and just make it so much more interesting. But consider every doodle you do potentially has a meaning and communicates something to the person that's going to see your collage. So you can either do it intuitively, that means without too much thought, or you might be really clever and really think about some of the things that you're adding in. I might, for example, outline here BLM, 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 just in a continual, like ticket tape type outline. So you could try that. You could go all the way around like so. The artist quite often has numbers included in the work. You might want to look at some of the horrible data and horrific numbers of people that are either infected or sadly have lost their lives from coronavirus. You might want to include some of those figures, arrows as well, graphs, sort of shapes that look like a first wave and a second wave. All of those sorts of things would work. I think we're approaching very tragically around 100,000 lost lives from COVID since the crisis began. So again, you could add in those sorts of numbers and you could do them repeatedly around the piece. Okay, so there's so much more that I can do this collage, but I've spent a little bit of time starting. I'm now going to spend at least another 40 minutes really drawing into it, and hopefully by the end I'll have a really, really interesting, really diverse, really complex final piece. So I've just been away for a good 45 minutes to an hour embellishing my collage, and I just wanted to show you the final piece, or nearly final. I'll probably add a little bit more to it. But hopefully you can see here that I've really used those circles, just like Jauver's work in my piece. I actually used a protractor to do that, as well as some tape and various other things to draw around. You'll notice that there's a lot of dashed and dotted lines. Again, very scientific looking, very much linking to the COVID pandemic and linking to Jauver's style. You'll see up the top here, the tea stain is now dry, so it just gives a nice off-white colour. And I've just extended some of the text from this piece that I'd cut out about racism. Again, here I decided to use the end of this set square just to draw a triangle. And this white is actually something that you may or may not know about, or maybe your parents have some, but back in the old days, before we used computers a lot, we used to use Tipp-Ex to correct our mistakes. So if you do have any Tipp-Ex, it's fantastic for drawing on top of dark colours. The last thing I just want to talk about really is that I managed to use some masking tape. If you have any masking tape or any coloured tape, electrical tape, anything like that, then please, just a small amount of it cut up and stuck down is really lovely to use, and I've drawn on top of that. And then if I just move it up so you can see the bottom part, similarly here I've used that sort of arc and the dashes, and the Tipp-Ex down there. And I really enjoyed doing that task, purely because there's no right or wrong, and it was something that just sort of grew, and I just it was quite meditative, to be honest, just sitting there and drawing into it, doodling into it, just seeing how it evolved, not feeling any pressure about it needing to look like something in particular. I just tried to keep a particular style that linked with Jova's work, and also thinking about all the lines and the shapes and the doodles having some sort of medical or scientific link, with the exception of the BLM that I've put in there, so that it just always comes back to the theme, which is very much about 2020. And of course, I cut the pages, which you've already seen. So I'm pretty happy with that, and I hope you're happy with yours too.